The vast council chamber on Zenith Prime, carved from the dark obsidian of a dead neutron moon, pulsed with a soft golden glow. The room, enormous beyond measure, was filled with hundreds of delegates from every corner of the galaxy, reptilian, insectoid, and silicon-based species, each sitting behind their respective sigils, which symbolized their home worlds. Above them, the shimmering banners of the Galactic Compact hung in the artificial gravity, a testament to unity. But there was one notable absence. The seat marked by Earth's emblem, a fractured blue and white sphere gripped by a silver gauntlet, remained empty. High Speaker Velter of the Shozer, perched upon his high throne-like platform, rose with a slow grace. His iridescent scales shimmered in the light as he spread his clawed arms. His voice, amplified across the chamber, carried across the stars as he addressed the assembly. "Delegates," he began, his voice steady, "we convene today under the assumption of order. Let us not mistake silence for insurrection." His gaze swept across the room. "The humans have their ways." A murmur spread through the chamber, an unsettling ripple of discontent. The ancient, gelatinous diplomats blinked slowly, their disapproval synchronized. The Kroi, with their skeletal exoskeletons, clattered their mandibles in frustration, while even the stoic Krellian warlords let out uneasy grunts. Earth had been expected here today. "The humans requested this session, and now they've vanished," hissed the trade minister, his voice sharp with irritation. Velter's jaw twitched. "A tactic," he muttered. "Their species thrives on tension. Unpredictability is their strength." Across the chamber, Counselor Marith of the Altari leaned forward, her crystalline form sparkling. "They've ignored 3 summons," she said, her voice cold with disappointment. "This is the 4th. What if they simply refuse to engage in diplomacy? We move," B'Elar spoke, his tone softer but firm. "Unified." Back in the cold, desolate orbit of Mars, Admiral Raoul Morgan stood on the bridge of the Tyrant's Wake, her uniform stark and simple. No medals, no decorations, just matte black plates with a silver insignia that marked Earth's sovereign command. Below her, Earth's orbital fleet hung in the silence of space, a fleet of stealthy destroyers, adaptive frigates, and 3 classified objects known only to the highest echelons of security. She glanced at the crumpled, torn invitation from the council, its golden seal now reduced to tatters. "Are you sure?" General Nadarov asked, his voice low and tense. "If we don't show up now, we cross a line. A big one." Morgan didn't even glance back at him. Her voice, when it came, was as cold as space itself. "They never wanted peace," she said. "They wanted compliance. Submission. This summit? It's just a leash." Nadarov hesitated, his mind weighing the implications. "What about the others? The Senate, the Union Bloc, the Lunar Coalition, they're all nervous." Morgan's green eyes flashed with a tired but resolute fire. "They should be," she said, as she picked up a small drive from her desk. "That's why they'll fall in line." She slid the drive into the holoscreen, and the room dimmed as a recording flickered to life. The screen displayed a conversation from the council's private chambers, unaware of human interception. "Pacify Earth's economy with interstellar loans. Make them dependent. Seed influence through trade, collapse their cultural cores. Once internal division rises, install sympathetic leadership." The room went dead silent. "I thought we were paranoid," muttered Nadarov. "Turns out we were just late." Morgan turned toward the viewport, staring out at the vast, cold expanse of space. "They think we're still fractured," she said quietly. "Still children playing at Empire. They don't understand what they've done." Back on Zenith Prime, the council proceedings dragged on. Accusations flew, and the delegates' voices clashed. The Valmari delegation stood to speak, but their words were drowned out as the chamber lights flickered briefly and dimmed. Every eye turned toward Earth's seat. Still empty. A fresh wave of discomfort rippled through the chamber. Velter cleared his throat, his voice sharp. This dramatic display serves no purpose. Earth has made its decision. He motioned to the Prime Notary. Record Earth's failure to appear. Let us proceed. But before the notary could finalize the record, a faint shimmer appeared across the chamber's projection grid. A strange, subtle pulse. The Earth seal flickered once and then disappeared. On Mars, the War Council dispersed, leaving Admiral Morgan alone. Her aide, Lieutenant R.A. Torres, entered briskly. We've received a subspace ping from Zenith, Torres reported. They're moving ahead with sanctions. Phase 1. Morgan nodded slowly. As expected? What now? She walked to a side locker and pulled out a sealed transmission beacon. Handing it to Torres, she said, Now we do what humans do best. We prepare for the storm. And we make sure we're the ones who bring it. Hours later, Velter retreated to his private chamber high above Zenith's central spire. The twin suns cast long shadows across his ornate quarters. Sipping a pale blue nectar, he reviewed the latest reports. The sanctions were set, and council support was strong, though cracks were beginning to show. The elderly delegates wanted another delay, and the Corellian spoke of restraint. Fools! He muttered to himself. He opened a secure channel. A shadowy figure appeared on the screen, silent and hooded. Begin the secondary plan, Velter ordered. Deploy the seeds. Activate Veil Protocol. The figure nodded in acknowledgement. And Earth? Velter's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Earth just ensured its place beneath our heel. Far below, in the pressurized heart of Mars Command, Admiral Morgan stood before a room filled with Earth's finest generals, scientists, and strategists. Her voice was calm but resolute. We don't need their counsel. What we need is clarity. And every action they've taken has made one thing clear. They fear us. She tapped a command pad, dimming the lights. New files appeared on every terminal. Fleet mobilization orders, blackout protocols, frameworks for economic decoupling. No more playing by their rules, she said firmly. No more seats at their table. A long pause settled over the room. Then, with quiet confidence, she added, Now we flip the table. Above Earth, the skies remained deceptively calm. But beneath the surface, everything was changing. At Mars High Command, Admiral Morgan stood before a table displaying Earth, Luna, and the orbital rings. The room was dim, the air thick with anticipation. A senator from Europa leaned forward, his voice tinged with concern. You're asking for full military synchronization. That's not defense, Admiral. That's preparation for open conflict. Morgan didn't flinch. Conflict already started, she said, her eyes locking onto his. They just haven't made the announcement yet. She pressed a button, and the room screen lit up with intercepted intelligence from the Council, the seal of the Shozer Dominion stamped on every document. Operation Veil Phase 1, she said, her voice cold and final. In the shadow of the looming council, the future of Earth teetered on the edge. The plan was simple but devastating. Destabilize Earth's food chains through engineered crop plagues. Phase 2 would see the introduction of compliant leadership via relentless trade and political pressure. Finally, Phase 3 promised full integration into the Council hierarchy within a single generation, a slow suffocation of sovereignty. A heavy silence descended over the room as the weight of the plan settled in. General Hassan exhaled quietly, the reality of the situation sinking in. So, it wasn't just paranoia, he murmured. No, Morgan replied, her voice cold as ice. It was mercy. And it's run out. Meanwhile, on Zenith Prime, the Council's intelligence subchamber buzzed with activity. Hollow, floating screens formed a ring around Director Sether, head of covert operations, his silver tendrils rippling with anxiety, a sign of unease among his species. "Our operatives confirm Earth is mobilizing," said Sailthor, one of Sether's analysts. "They're silent, encrypted. Every fleet drydock is active." Velter, sitting composed, his claws steepled in thought, gave a slow nod. "Then we accelerate. Economic pressure first. Fuel exports cut, medical shipments blocked. If they retaliate, we show the galaxy what happens when a minor species forgets its place." Back on Earth, night had settled over the Atlantic Federation's Capitol dome. Inside a private chamber, Admiral Morgan met with President Alina Park. No aides. No recordings. Just a quiet exchange between two of Earth's steely leaders. Park's hands tightened around the floating council documents in front of her. "I wanted peace," Park whispered, her voice tinged with regret. "But if we go through with this, do you know what it means?" Morgan's answer was quiet, firm. "It means we survive on our terms, or we don't survive at all." Park closed her eyes briefly, weighed down by the gravity of the decision. "And if other nations refuse to join?" "They won't," Morgan said bluntly. "Not after tonight." Back at Mars Command, deep beneath Olympus Mons, the reactors thrummed as Operation Blind Sky was enacted. 32 stealth cruisers, sleek and dark, activated their adaptive cloaks. "Fleet Alpha Shadow entering Void Drift," reported Lieutenant Torres. Morgan, standing at the command deck, nodded. "Coordinates locked. 7 Council relay hubs. No engagement, only observation. And if they detect you—" "We won't be detected," Torres finished. On Zenith Prime, Velter descended into a secure vault beneath the council chamber. Inside, 12 figures sat around a fog-drenched table, leaders from covert branches of the galaxy's most powerful species. Above the table, a hologram of Earth rotated slowly, its fragile image a reminder of the power they held over it. "Humanity rejected negotiation," Velter began, his voice steady. "So we've removed their options." From the shadows, Commander Kelt of the Krellian Legion spoke, his voice low. "Have we confirmed human vulnerability?" Sailthor activated a display, showing maps of Earth's population centers, trade routes, and food supply lines. "Our analysts have found fractures. Their unity is recent. They still depend on Council trade networks." Velter's smile was thin. "Then we break the spine, not with war, but with hunger and doubt." While these dark plans unfurled, Morgan stood just outside Earth's unified Senate chamber, listening to the heated arguments behind reinforced walls. "They'll crush our economy," one delegate shouted. "They'll blockade Earth. We're not ready." Stepping inside, Morgan's presence silenced the room. She didn't raise her voice. "Readiness isn't an option," she said coolly. "It's a deadline." A senator from South Asia stood, incredulous. "You're asking us to declare sovereignty outside the council? That means no fuel imports, no medical supplies." Morgan placed a data chip on the podium. "That fuel? It's designed to shut down our reactors if they push a remote code. Those medicines? Embedded with protein tags to track genetic compatibility. These aren't alliances," she said with finality. "They're chains." The room fell deathly still. President Park entered behind her, her expression resolute. "We vote tonight," she said. "No more delays." Hours later, the results were projected on the chamber's main screen. Earth's Sovereign Defense Pact passed. A sweeping 82% in favor. Morgan didn't celebrate. She simply exhaled. "Send it," she ordered. Torres initiated a single-pulse transmission. A broad-spectrum burst shot out across the solar boundary. The message was clear. Earth withdraws from all Council diplomatic proceedings. Effective immediately. At Zenith Prime, alarms blared in the Council chamber. Chaos erupted as delegates shouted in confusion and anger. "What do they mean, withdrawal?" demanded one minister. "They can't cancel their membership," screeched an elderly elder. "It's binding." Velter stood, his voice cold and commanding. "They think defiance earns respect. It earns consequence." And then, across every galactic display, a new symbol appeared. Not the Council's insignia, but humanity's. A rotating Earth wrapped in silver text, "We do not yield." No demands. No speeches. Just that. Velter's jaw clenched in fury. "Begin sanctions," he ordered. On Mars, Admiral Raoul Morgan stood silently, gazing at the stars. The vastness of space was as cold and indifferent as ever. Torres approached her quietly, the weight of their mission settling in. "Council response confirmed," Torres reported. "Economic blockades. They're accusing us of aggression." Morgan turned her sharp gaze toward her. "Prepare Phase 2, she ordered, her voice steady. Torres hesitated for a moment. "What about diplomacy?" she asked. Morgan's eyes, reflecting the cold light of the stars, seemed as sharp as shards of glass. "Diplomacy ended when they tried to buy us peace, piece by piece." Far from Earth, deep in the blackness between star systems, a single human stealth cruiser floated silently above a Council relay station. The captain sent a brief transmission back to Mars. The station was unaware, its defenses obsolete and outdated. Morgan's response was swift. "Hold position. No engagement. Let them wonder how close we are." Back on Zenith Prime, Velter stood in the Council's highest tower, staring at the empty human seat. The chamber was eerily quiet, the holograms of delegates frozen in place. "They want isolation," Velter muttered to himself. "Let them drown in it." He didn't see the faint distortion in the air beside him, a micro-stealth drone, recording everything, silently documenting the unfolding drama. Humanity hadn't declared war. They'd simply stopped asking for permission. On the lunar surface, deep under Serenitatis, a signal array hummed with power and intention. The engineers worked with precision as the broadcast chamber prepared to make a move no species had ever dared. Speak directly to the galaxy, without permission. Admiral Morgan stood in the chamber, her armored shoulders glowing in the dim light of the console screens. The engineers moved around her with practiced focus, every movement deliberate. Every breath felt like standing at the edge of a blade. "Signal strength?" she asked, her voice calm but urgent. "Maximum amplitude," came the reply. "We'll override every Council relay from here to the Outer Rim." Lieutenant Torres stood beside her, her hands steady, despite the growing tension. "Once we transmit, we can't take it back." Morgan's expression remained unchanged. "We're not going to." Across the galaxy, the Council assembled once more. The atmosphere was thick with unease. Human trade routes had gone dark. Council patrols were reporting phantom readings near their beacons. Public unrest simmered among several minor species. The High Speaker entered the chamber with his usual regal calm, though his eyes betrayed his discomfort. "Order!" he declared, his voice cutting through the tension. "We vote today on the enforcement of the trade blockade." Then, in an instant, the lights cut out. Every hologram dissolved into static. A single symbol appeared above the central dais. Earth's sigil. The room fell into stunned silence, as though the air itself was holding its breath. The screen flickered, and a figure appeared. Admiral Raoul Morgan stood before the assembly. She wasn't dressed in ceremonial robes or draped in medals. No flag fluttered behind her. She wore a black combat uniform, and the backdrop was the cold, unyielding steel of Earth's command center. "Members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice calm but resolute. "You summoned us. You demanded our obedience. You offered peace with poisoned hands." Every translator implant vibrated with her words, a message that reverberated deep within every delegate's mind. Morgan continued, her eyes fixed on the camera. You speak of unity, but your private archives speak of something else. She raised a gloved hand, and encrypted files appeared behind her, each one carrying the Council's insignia. Project Veil, she said, the words heavy with gravity. Human Cultural Assimilation Strategy. Targeted Bioweapons Genome Log. Homo sapiens Revision 7.2. Economic Pacification Templates. Earth Sector. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some delegates stood in outrage, others in fear. Velter's jaw tightened, the muscles beneath his scales twitching. Fabrication, he spat. But Morgan, anticipating this, stepped aside. Behind her, standing in stark contrast to the military command room, was Dr. Sato Kimura, head researcher for the Council's Biological Ethics Commission. A man presumed dead for 11 cycles. He looked directly into the camera. These documents are real, he said, his voice trembling. I was ordered to assist in designing a sterilization protocol in case Earth became non-compliant. I fled when I realized what they would do. The chamber erupted in shouts, accusations flying from every corner. Back on the moon, Lieutenant Torres whispered, They're in chaos. Morgan didn't blink. Good, she said flatly. Inside the council chamber, chaos spread like wildfire. Delegates shouted, some demanding justice, others calling for the suppression of the broadcast. Velter stepped forward, his voice low but sharp. Cut the signal. One of the technicians stammered. We can't. It's coming from every relay simultaneously. How? Velter demanded, his voice filled with disbelief. The technician swallowed. They rewrote the relay network from the outside. Velter froze, realizing the magnitude of the breach. On the screen, Morgan's gaze sharpened, unwavering. Humanity will not attend your tribunals, she said, her voice ringing out like a declaration of war. We will not surrender our skies. We will not kneel for peace, trade, or threats. She leaned forward slightly, her words cutting through the silence that had fallen over the council chamber. But hear this clearly. We do not seek war. We seek truth. And now the galaxy knows yours. The silence hung in the air like a weight. Morgan's final words etched themselves into the minds of all present. Any act of force against Earth or her colonies will be answered. She paused, letting her words linger. Not with negotiations. With consequences. Her image flickered and then vanished. In its place, a grainy transmission appeared, showing footage of 7 council trade routes. One by one, human ships uncloaked, silent, unchallenged, and perfectly positioned to cut every major supply chain. Then, as quickly as they'd appeared, the ships vanished again, leaving nothing but static behind. The broadcast ended. For a long moment, the council chamber was dead silent. No one moved. Then the storm hit. Ambassadors from various species screamed in panic, some frantically sending emergency messages back to their homeworlds. The elderly council members, those steeped in tradition, demanded an immediate truth tribunal. The Krellian war seat called for military retaliation. Velter slammed a clawed hand down onto the stone dais. Order! He bellowed. But it was too late. The order had already started to crumble. On Luna, inside the broadcast chamber, a profound stillness hung in the air. There were no alarms, no celebrations, just a heavy, palpable silence. Lieutenant Torres exhaled deeply. It's done. Morgan nodded. Begin Phase 3. Fortify Europa Gate. Move the Pacific Fleet to dark orbit around Titan. Inform Mars Command. No one fires unless fired upon. She paused, looking out across the vastness of space. And the Council? Torres asked. They'll argue, Morgan said, her voice unwavering. They'll panic. Some will call for war. Others will hesitate. And you? Torres asked, glancing over at the blue orb of Earth, visible even from lunar soil. I'll wait, Morgan said, her voice as calm as the cold vacuum outside. Meanwhile, back on Zenith Prime, Velter walked the dimly lit halls toward his private chamber. The polished marble beneath his feet reflected his every step, casting eerie shadows in the silence. Sailthor, the Director of Intelligence, stepped beside him. What is our official response? He asked quietly. Velter's eyes narrowed, the weight of the situation settling in. War isn't possible. Not now. Too many species are beginning to doubt us. Then what do we do? Sailthor pressed. We find their weakness, Velter said, his voice lowering. Their hesitations. Their fractures. He stopped outside his chamber door, his eyes glinting. And if they have none, we create one. On Earth, in a quiet corner of New Geneva, civilians watched the replay of the broadcast on public terminals. Some felt fear, others stood straighter. A father, dressed in a mechanic's jumpsuit, whispered to his daughter, They're not bowing anymore. The little girl, staring at the Earth flag fluttering on the screen, replied simply, Good. Back on Mars, Admiral Morgan stood alone on the observation bridge, watching the silhouettes of ships glide through the vast void. There was no celebration, only preparation. The galaxy had heard Earth's voice, but not with surrender, only with a warning. The Council had fractured. What once was filled with protocol now buzzed with whispered fears. The chamber no longer echoed with unity. It rang with suspicion. Accusations flew like sparks in dry brush. Ambassadors from lesser species demanded investigations. The Valari Confederation, once firmly allied, declared neutrality. Some even quietly proposed temporary alignments with Earth. Velter sat at the high dais, motionless, claws tapping slowly against the polished stone. Beneath his calm exterior, pressure was building. The room no longer bent to his will. Power was slipping. Earth defied protocol. Velter finally spoke, his voice cold and calculated. They violated interstellar law. The penalty must be clear. But with what army? Muttered one of the lesser ambassadors. You saw their cloaked ships. Do we even know what they're using? They won't stop there. Another delegate said, their voice laced with concern. They'll expose everything. We can't hold the fringe systems if they side with Earth. Velter raised a hand, and the room fell silent. If unity falters now, we lose everything. We don't need open war. We need precision. He gestured to Sailthor, who stepped forward with a data slate in hand. Operation Ashvin, Velter said softly, his eyes fixed on the screen before him. On Earth, dusk fell over the Atlantic arcology. Inside the secure defense nexus, Admiral Morgan reviewed transmissions from the outer edges of Earth's solar system. Fleet Orion reported from Titan. Council surveillance probes had been dismantled mid-transmission, with no trace, no retaliation. Europa Gate remained firmly under Earth's control. What about Council fleets? Morgan asked, her tone calm but expectant. They're scattered, Torres replied. No formations near Sol. No movement beyond the legal trade corridors. They're stalled. Morgan turned to her private console and pulled up new intelligence. Covert Council black sites exposed by the stolen archives. There it was, proof of targeted sterilization programs, political manipulation, and biological triggers buried deep within the Council's dark schemes. They planned a proxy war, Morgan whispered. Where? Torres asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. Here, Morgan replied, her voice ice-cold. Earthbound. With our own. In New Dar, a diplomatic convoy exploded as it left the Terran Peace Assembly. The blast flattened 2 city blocks, killing 37, including 4 ambassadors. The explosion came from a courier drone registered to the Krelian consulate. Footage flooded every news channel. Council signatures, council tags, council fingerprints. Yet Morgan didn't order retaliation. She ordered silence. 2 days later, Velter stood before the council's media relay. This wasn't a speech to the galaxy. It was for his own species. "Control," he began, his voice laced with urgency. "Once presumed, now needs reinforcement. They struck themselves," he claimed. "This is psychological warfare. They seek to rally support through false martyrdom. They provoke us so we appear monstrous." But behind the camera, doubt spread. Off-world analysts, independent researchers, and non-aligned systems were no longer buying the narrative. Someone had leaked the entire Veil archive publicly. Now, everyone knew the truth. On Luna, beneath the fortress of Merimrium, Earth's final plan activated. Morgan addressed Earth's Sovereign Defense Council. Her tone was steady, but her words carried a weight few could ignore. "They'll avoid direct war for now," she said, her eyes scanning the room. "But the Council is losing its grip. They'll try to fracture us from the inside. Propaganda, infiltration, misdirection." She tapped the table screen, and a map unfolded. Earth and her colonies are surrounded by Council-adjacent states. All communications remain locked. All transports are scanned. All ports fortified. Let them knock. We won't open the door." A general from the Pacific Rim raised a question. "What about allies?" Morgan paused, her gaze unwavering. "We don't need them." In the shadows of the Kuiper Belt, Earth's most advanced stealth vessel, Eclipse, drifted unseen, its AI decrypting Council fleet relays in real time. Thousands of Council warships, scattered across multiple sectors, made no move towards Sol. Earth's fleet didn't need to fire. It simply existed. And that, it seemed, was enough.